Is Diablo 4 too casual or not casual enough? A lot of people are debating this, and I wanted to react to a video by Veiled Shot called The Casual Problem in Diablo 4. It seemed like a good video sort of tackling the topic and engaging with it. I've already kind of put together my own video saying that I do think this game's going to struggle to capture and keep casuals. Many people think you don't need casuals in a game like Diablo 4. So let's take a listen to what he has to say in his video called The Casual Problem.
So I wanted to take a minute and tackle what I consider the casual problem, which is a massive stigma towards anyone that is deemed casual or any game that is deemed casual.
How often do you think he gets told he looks like Jon Snow? Just curious. How many times a day? Take bets.
There is a huge connotation with that word where basically if it's a casual game, then it's easy, it's trash, it's unskillful, and these players aren't even true gamers. And this is a very common perspective, and I want to talk about it and how I believe Diablo 4 is a more casual game, but that's actually not necessarily a bad thing, because just because a game can be casual doesn't mean that there isn't a ton of min-maxing going on. Doesn't mean that there's a ton of really, really impressive skill demonstrations, and does not mean that there isn't something there for your more hardcore players such as myself. Now,
I agree with that. I agree. I think I want to get a good pause spot here. I do agree with that. I think people are creating a false binary, a false dichotomy that like if the game is casual, there's nothing for hardcores. I am worried though that Diablo 4 is going to kind of land in a sort of a valley of not enough for hardcores, but who hardcored for the casual. Like it's kind of like going to land in the middle. So let's see what he says.
Find casuals and really dive into some of the comments that you all have made. The reason I make all these videos before Diablo 4 comes out is to talk with you all, engage in the community. And if you guys are interested in that type of content, be sure to subscribe. Only about 9% of you are subscribed. So if you're interested in Diablo 4 content before the game, and especially when the game comes out, I'll be absolutely blasting as I usually do. And
please support anybody that we react to. There's a link below to the video. Support the channel. The stat that you're seeing up there, not subscribe, that's always tough when you're covering a new game. And if you're really good and you're giving good information, people tend to use you for that on YouTube because they're just sort of searching. Boom, they watch and they're out. So I know that pain of the YouTube audience having that difficulty of kind of sticking because that's what YouTube's great for. So support channels like this if you feel like the content's good and you watch them on that regular basis. It does help them because then you get the little ping and you're like, oh, new video.
And you'll see a ton of content then. Now, the first thing I want to start off is defining what a casual player is. So defining casual here, I have a couple articles, and these all kind of go in line with a lot of the more scientific studies that I've gone into, but we're not diving in super deep here. This is just a pretty basic search. This first article basically says that 30% of people play 8 to 12 hours of video games per week. That's the largest portion of respondents. Keep in mind that these are people that classify themselves as gamers. The largest share of Gen X typically splits between 8 and 12 hours and 1 to 3 hours per week. And boomers are mostly 1 to 3 hours per week. Again,
that's kind of a weird split. The largest share of Gen X gamers were split evenly between 8 to 12 and 1 to 3. Oh, 26% each. I didn't see the each there. I was like, huh? I was like, what? Oh, I see. So 26% land in the 8 to 12, 26% land in the 1 to 3. So that's a pretty big spread, though. That's a big difference between 1 to 3 a week and the 8 to 12. I've continually said that this 1 to 3 is really important if they make up a fourth of your player base or more, especially boomers. I mean, I don't know how many boomers are going to be playing Diablo because Diablo was out kind of at a time when they weren't really gaming yet. Well, maybe they were. I don't know. That's a lot of people plugging into the 1 to 3 hours a week, and those are the people that are going to struggle with a game like Diablo's seasonal structure in the Battle Pass. I got to consider those people. There's a lot of them.
These definitions are a little bit different. The second article basically says video gamers spend about 8 hours and 27 minutes each week. Again, another one here, this is based on country. Statistic here, 12 hours for China, 10 for Vietnam. And as we go to the Western, we have about 7-8 hours or so. And this last one, again, average gamers are spending about 7 hours and 7 minutes each week. So what's the problem with this type of classification? Why are these specific people being targeted? And why is the word casual being used as a derogatory term towards games and people?
Yeah, people use it as a pejorative.
General? And a lot of people consider themselves casual players just because they enjoy games. But I want to cite a couple of comments here. For example, one of the comments a few days ago basically said, oh, it's a casual game. So sad what D2 has become. D4 is trash. Don't waste your time. And that is mainly because, again, it is classified as a casual game.
A lot of people take this sort of false binary, this sort of false dichotomy where if it's casual, don't play it. It's garbage, it's trash, don't play it. It's like, I would imagine a game as big as Diablo 4 has got space for all of us, but, you know.
On top of that, this other person basically mentions that, well, I also consider Vale to be more casual than other content creators, so it's no wonder you agree with him. I find that I disagree with most of what he says, and his sentiments are why games are getting super casual to the point where they are just show up for a participation prize game. So this type of sentiment where it's like, oh, well, this game isn't any complicated mess or any sort of actual effort tied to it. It's a casual mess, and people who are casual, they are not intelligent. They don't know what they're talking about. They're typically just thrown by the wayside, and also the game is associated with this term, and therefore people throw away the game as well.
I like the fact that he pulled up comments, especially one that even said, you know, you agree with Vale and he's casual and this is what's bad for games. And he's just kind of addressing it and taking it in stride. I think that shows, you know, I like a YouTuber that's not ruffled by mean comments, you know, take it in stride, make content with it. That's smart, you know. I want to applaud that. I think that high caliber, I feel similar to his approach to content. I remember my early days of making content, I felt like I did similar things. It was like, oh yeah, I'm going to, you know, try to engage the community and read the comments. And that gets harder and harder as time goes on because you just get busier. So I applaud him doing that. I think that's a great way to approach your content.
And I want to kind of talk about this a little bit more because I think this is actually a massive problem, because as we've just stated, the vast majority of people do not have a ton of time or do not want to spend a ton of time gaming. And so this is what the audience typically is appealing to, or rather the developers and the companies are appealing to. They're appealing to this audience, trying to make a game that has depth, but also doesn't necessarily need the depth to be a solid game. And that's what I really want to dive into, which is that casual doesn't necessarily have to matter in a sense. Now, it's no secret that I claim that Diablo 4 is a much more casual game. It is designed for the casual ARPG enjoyer. That is what I've stated in several different videos. And I would say that most people, I don't know of any person realistically that would say, oh yeah, D2 is actually more of a casual player's audience. Last Epoch is more casual. Path of Exile is more casual. The only one that I've seen potentially is Diablo 3, and I actually do agree Diablo 3 is also meant for a casual audience. Now,
and I think he's right, and this is where I'm worried about Diablo 4. I think Diablo 4 is 100% a far more casual game and a far more casual approach to the ARPG genre. If you look at Path of Exile, it's ridiculous. It's very inaccessible to the casual player, and that's why they love it. Good for you, man. Keep playing Path of Exile, all you guys that love that. You know, you want to make a spreadsheet to play a video game? Knock yourself out. I've heard Last Epoch is really enjoyable, but they're going broad audience here. Diablo 4 is landing on console and landing on PC simultaneously for the first time in the franchise's history, and that broad audience, you got to get them in, and you got to get them in with a more casual game. However, remaking a character every season, especially considering the game launches in a preseason state, I think a lot of casuals are going to be very confused why they can't jump into Season 1 with their existing character.
What does this mean in a sense of the game rather than the player? And also, does this truly matter? Well, first off, what it means is, it doesn't mean that the game doesn't have any depth. It just means that the systems in place encourage players to potentially spend only a small amount of time in the game and yet also get rewarded for it. They don't need to slug through many difficult pieces of content, or the systems have a baseline simplicity, sort of the idea of easy to start, difficult to master. This is
And I think that's really tough to pull off in a game like Diablo because you have to go up in tiers of difficulty in order to get into the mastery. And I just think a lot of people aren't going to do that. So you have to make sure the first rung of the ladder is really, really enjoyable. Because if not, those people are just going to leave. They're just not going to play. I also applaud his efforts here playing as the druid. It's just, it's not looking so hot. That druid, man, they really got to work on him. But I do think what he's saying is a challenge in Diablo because typically it's like the casuals are never going to increase that world tier. They're never going to go run the tough stuff. So you got to make sure entrance level, bottom rung of the ladder is really enjoyable. And the battle pass demands a lot. And the seasonal character format, I just don't think is going to jive with people at that bottom rung.
The idea of a casual audience, right? A casual game. Diablo 3 is a perfect example of this. Maxroll has a ton of guides where they're min-maxing, putting builds together, and all that good stuff that actually do allow you to push higher and higher and higher. But the standard average Diablo 3 player could easily just equip a set of gear and then use those abilities and do completely fine, right? And blast their way through tons of greater rifts. It's really not that difficult. But that doesn't mean that people aren't sitting there min-maxing, trying to level as fast as possible and doing all these things to get the most out of the game. The same thing applies for Diablo 3, right? In fact, I would argue that games that have a baseline difficulty, baseline meaning when you start the game, when you're leveling up, and when you're going through the initial skill process, it's very difficult to understand and it has a whole large learning curve. I think that's actually necessarily a poor onboarding experience. I think games that generally have an appeal to a casual audience are actually constructed a little bit better because you get an initial onboarding experience, it's easy to pick up, but then as you dive deeper and deeper into the systems, you end up in a situation where it actually has a lot of depth.
And the onboarding experience doesn't necessarily only need to be in a game built for casuals. We did a video over on our other channel about difficulty in Lords of the Fallen, and they've established a better onboarding process. They want players to kind of get in and get their footing before it gets really, really difficult. If you like that kind of content, check out Reforge Rundown. It's more of an upload-oriented channel. This channel is kind of a mixture of reactions and longer-form content like this and live shows. And that video, we get into that. We get into a difficulty discussion. We get into a discussion about whether or not games should have easy modes and why onboarding is important. It's especially important in a game like Diablo 4 because they're trying to make the game fun and accessible. This is why class balance is so important, because if you're playing as one of the classes that kind of felt like crap in the beta, you're going to wonder if it's the game. Like a casual player might think this game's just kind of lame. Everything takes forever to die. I don't feel that enjoyable sense of forward momentum and fight. Well, they're going to have to consider that. The onboarding process is going to be intrinsically linked to the class design as well.
Perfect example of this is Diablo 4's Paragon system, right? The Paragon system has a very baseline, simplistic look. Oh, there are some stat nodes, there are some major nodes like legendary nodes and rare nodes that give me specific bonuses for specific skills. I just have to run those skills, pick up the bonuses that boost those skills, and I'm good to go. That's great. Yes, you can absolutely do that, and you could probably be super efficient there. However, you may be able to squeeze 10, 20% more damage, more effectiveness in combat, or even vastly more based on how you go about going through your tree and picking up side nodes that you may otherwise not have, or more importantly, picking up nodes around the glyph system, right, which focuses in on an area on the Paragon board.
And the Paragon board can basically add like so many, it's like adding legendary pieces to your kit, essentially, once it's all said and done. I'm just not sure if that's going to appeal to the hardcore audience because they really, really want to have a build that they pick and then they kind of go get items for that build. I've had some conversations with guys about this. They don't like loot-based ability power. They want it to be sort of skill tree-based power. And I also don't think they like the Paragon boards because they don't feel like they're going to be as in control of them, and they're worried about that. I do think, though, charting paths to those legendary glyphs and the things that are essentially adding legendaries to your build, I think people need to get a taste of that before they really determine whether or not it's not built well for endgame or for the hardcore players.
Systems are meant to be very simplistic on a surface level, but also have a ton of ability to change things up and min-max all of your stats, right? So when I say casual game, what I mean by that is a lot of the initial gameplay mechanics are easy to pick up. there isn't a whole lot of baseline difficulty, but that doesn't mean there isn't an end game, and there doesn't mean that this isn't some sort of really simple babies type game, which I think that is the whole connotation along with casual gaming, right? There is an end game in Diablo 4, and we've explicitly, and the developers have explicitly basically told us everything that we kind of need to know in regards to what we're going to be doing in the end game. We don't know.
And this is where people are making a giant mistake and assuming they understand how much they're going to be able to do it, how often they're going to want to do it, and how it's all designed. I just think people are jumping to conclusions, and maybe they were holding out hope for something else, but I agree with him. We had a lot of info, and then all of a sudden everybody turned on the end game. It's like, what changed? They just did a summary video. They didn't go into any more detail. Obviously, we're going to be covering the stream where they go deeper. Riker's going to be on. We'll see how that goes, but I really don't think we're going to get any surprises. I think people are going to have to get there and feel it out for themselves.
Know how it's going to work in terms of what it actually will be like, but we know the concept in its entirety. And at the end of the day, that is the more experienced, less casual players, right? Most casual players will not necessarily engage a ton with the end game in any game because they're looking to casually play the game for the purpose of potentially just enjoying their experience rather than min-maxing their character and working through the game. So I wanted to explain sort of what casual meant to me, as well as what an actual casual player is, and hear a lot of your feedback and basically try to dispute this stigma that casual games are simplistic, trash, and not worth playing, because I think that's usually a pretty bad sentiment. Thanks for watching.
He's going to say thanks for watching.
Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below.
Okay. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure and check him out. Make sure and give him some love. Don't tease him about looking like Jon Snow. I think he's a good-looking guy. I hope he takes that in stride. He probably gets that all the time. Anyways, I like the video. I think he's right. I think so often casual's used as a pejorative. It's used as this insult, and if a game is casual, it's automatically bad. He's right. You can have a casual entrance to the game. That bottom rung can be casual, but then those top rungs, those harder difficulties, the min-maxing, the best in slot farming, all that stuff is not something the casuals are going to do. They will never get to that level and that threshold, which again is why I'm really, really curious how casuals are going to respond when they find out, hey, that character that I made and beat the campaign with, I can't take it into Season 1? That seems kind of crazy, right? It doesn't seem crazy to fans of Diablo 3 or people who are used to this in ARPGs, but to the casuals, those console players, those 1 to 3 hour a week players, they might spend a lot of money on that battle pass. They might spend a lot of time in this game over the years if it's really enjoyable, because it's got a great content loop. It feels really good to play this game. You don't want to lose those people. Make sure again and check out the link below. Give Veiled Shot some support over there on his YouTube channel and say that you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching this reaction here on Reforge Gaming. Hit subscribe, hit the bell button. I'll see you in the next one.